Welcome to another episode of Consumer Protection and You with Ryan Lippe. Ryan Lippe is a consumer educator with the state of Ohio Attorney General David Yost office. And today we're going to be revisiting Robocalls and some of the updates. So stay tuned. Welcome back to another episode of Consumer Protection and You with Ryan Lippe. Ryan Lippe is a consumer educator with the State of Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost's office. Ryan, it's always a pleasure talking with you.
Great. Nice to be with you and your audience. I appreciate it.
I know that Dave Yost, Attorney General, is always interested in how he can assist we in Ohio with some of the different scams that are coming along. But scams are one thing. Getting yourself into a situation where you're eligible for a scam, I think, comes from robocalls. Am I correct?
Absolutely. A lot of scams are perpetrated first through robocalls, most of which are illegal in the United States. But scammers don't care. They'll make millions of calls a day trying to get folks to answer the phone. And one way they do that is through caller ID spoofing. If you notice, a lot of the scam calls you're getting start with your area code and maybe even your local prefix. That's because they use caller ID spoofing, which is technology that allows them to hide the real number they're calling from, which may be some country far away in the Caribbean or in Europe, and actually give you what you think is a local phone number that you're answering. So it's all just trying to get you to answer the phone. And once you answer the phone, they want to go after your personal information and or your money. Most robocalls are illegal, as I mentioned. The ones we want to get are legal, like calls from our school, calls from our doctor's office, robocalls to remind us of important appointments or the snow emergencies that we sometimes like and dislike at the same time. But all the other robocalls, for the most part, if they're sales calls, require somebody's express written consent. And since none of us have probably given that to the company calling us, which may very well be a scam artist, those calls are generally illegal. So it's important to know to not answer the phone if you don't recognize the phone number that is calling you, whether it be on your caller ID or whether it be on your screen on your cell phone. It's a good habit to get into, to stop and think before you pick up the phone, because just picking up the phone may result in you getting more robocalls rather than fewer. Some people want to be diplomatic. Other people want to blow a whistle or hang up the phone or slam the phone down. You don't want to hurt your own personal equipment. That sort of goes the other direction and makes you a victim of your own temper. But it is important to just maybe, end the conversation, say, I'm hanging up the phone now, please don't call again. Or don't answer the phone to begin with. I don't think it's discourteous to simply let your caller go to voicemail or go to an answering machine simply for the purposes of screening your calls so you're not again, face-to-face with a scammer or voice-to-voice with a scammer. So it's not rude to let it go to a voicemail or to let it go to an answering machine, and check your messages as often as you'd like. I don't want people out there to miss a call. And sometimes doctors do call from a private line, or sometimes someone is using a phone number that we don't recognize. So in the process of not answering calls, also get in the habit, if you know there's a message waiting for you on your voicemail or on your answering machine, by all means, check it as often as you feel necessary. But one way of getting out of a conversation with a scammer is to not answer that call to begin with. And again, a lot of the calls are illegal. A lot of the calls are scammers. I don't feel bad for them spending hours and hours badgering and bothering Ohioans. So we shouldn't feel bad about ending the conversation quickly.
I wonder if our technology is sort of lagging, especially with the phone companies. If they know it's a potential scam, why do they allow individuals to use different phone numbers than the ones that they are calling from?
Certainly, there have been times when phone companies could do more to help control some of these new technologies, or allowing them or not allowing them on their system. But there are a few acceptable uses of caller ID spoofing. For instance, domestic violence shelters may spoof their number to make sure their location or their true phone number isn't given out to a perpetrator or to others in the public. There may be folks that are debt collecting, the legal kind of debt collecting, that may spoof phone numbers to try to get someone to answer the phone so they can find out the location of someone who legitimately does owe a debt. But lots of scammers use caller ID spoofing. I know there have been laws passed as well as laws pending in states like Ohio dealing with caller ID spoofing issues. But the fact remains that scammers can make very, very cheap calls using internet-based global dialing systems. They can put on top of that technology to hide the phone number called caller ID spoofing, and they can try to make a profession with very little overhead. I mean, gone are the days when it would cost 40, 50, 60 cents or more to call 1 minute long distance. You can call for almost free using global dialers, using the internet, using data connections. So it's very, very cheap for a scammer, unfortunately, to place their calls, and there's not a whole lot of capital investment in putting up a scam operation and trying to get people to be conned into giving out personal information or money. Again, it's really cheap to do. In a lot of countries with poor employment, somebody may be driven to do that kind of illegal behavior. And again, we work with the phone companies. We try to get some of these operations shut down, but oftentimes it involves cooperation from other countries. Sometimes it involves cooperation from multiple telecommunication carriers. And ultimately, there's going to be people up to replacing scammers if they get caught anyway. So the real way to stop the scams is to be educated and to simply not answer the phone. If we get less Americans and less Ohioans to answer the phone, then maybe they'll quit dialing, or at least we can make it as hard as possible on the scammers. I mean, Dave Yost, as Attorney General, about a year ago, said he wanted Ohio to be one of the toughest states, or the toughest state in the nation, for robocallers to operate in. We're trying to do our robocall enforcement unit. We're trying to do educational tactics through our consumer protection section. So we're putting a lot of value-added services out there to Ohioans to have them learn more about the illegal calls, and most importantly, how to try to end the calls or report the calls if you do happen to answer them.
During the political process, individuals are trying to garner as much votes as possible. And one of the things that I've noticed right before major elections, we get a ton of robocalls from different politicians, et cetera. Are these legal?
There can be exceptions to some of the robocall laws and the do not call laws. I know, for example, there are 3 or 4 major exceptions to the do not call law, regardless of whether you're on the do not call list. If you're on the list, politicians are still allowed to call you. If you're on the list, nonprofit organizations and polling firms are still allowed to call you, as long as they're not also trying to ultimately sell you something. There are a few other exceptions. There are those that you've already done business with, or that you go do business with on an ongoing basis, even if you are on the do not call list. So there are some exceptions, but for the most part, a lot of the robocalls that consumers are getting, especially when there's not an election coming up, are illegal already, and they're scammers that are calling us. But yes, there are exceptions from the do not call law and other laws. So you got to mind those. But if you do want fewer phone calls from telemarketers, even legitimate telemarketers, because those are the ones that were designed to use the do not call law, were the legitimate telemarketers. We knew the scammers were going to call no matter what law tries to stop them. As long as it's technically feasible, the scammers are going to keep doing their scam jobs. But if you want fewer calls in general, it's still a good idea to sign up for the Do Not Call list. And that's at donotcall.gov, www.donotcall.gov, or there is a phone number, a toll-free phone number that goes with the Do Not Call list as well. It's 888-382-1222. And call from the phone that you're trying to register with the Do Not Call list. And if you've already registered your phone numbers, you won't be unregistered unless you want to be unregistered, and you shouldn't get any telemarketing calls unless they're a scammer or unless there needs to be enforcement action against a bad actor within the telemarketing industry. And in either case, systems generally have worked to gain compliance and to find those that need to be held accountable. But scammers in other countries, those are the ones that are giving, I think, law enforcement, the FCC, the Federal Trade Commission, Attorney General's offices, the most heartache are the scammers that are in other countries that use caller ID spoofing. But it's still a good idea to register your phone numbers with donotcall.gov. Still a good idea not to answer your phone at all unless you know the phone number that's calling you.
So let's suppose that I do register, do not call, and then I receive a phone call. What's my next step?
Absolutely report it. You can go to that same website, donotcall.gov, or call that same phone number, 888-382-1222, to register a complaint against someone who is violating the Do Not Call law. And essentially, if you've been on the list for 30 days, most of us have been on the list for 20 years. If you've been on the list for 30 days or longer, your call should be stopping. They are required to compare lists. The telemarketers are required to compare lists on an ongoing basis to make sure they are crossing off and not calling people on the Do Not Call list. So you may say, I still get tons of phone calls. And you're right, you do, but you can be more assured now than ever that a lot of those calls are scammers. Or there might be a few telemarketers that don't follow the law and haven't learned yet from enforcement action that they need to do that. And those are the ones that need fined. Those are the ones that need enforcement action by the Federal Trade Commission and folks like that. And I see press releases cross my email. Unfortunately, not on a daily basis, but on a regular basis, there are enforcement actions against telemarketers that violate the Do Not Call law. But again, politicians and those you already do business with, nonprofits, polling firms, there are some exceptions to the Do Not Call law.
Your office has made a really good video. Let's take a look at that video.
Great. I appreciate it. And they're all on our website at ohioprotects.org. Let's take a look at one of those now. So here's our main webpage. We're at ohioprotects.org right now. Again, ohioprotects.org. And as you can see, currently on the front page, it is filled with information about robocalls, including 5 videos, some publications called Robocall Basics and Robocall Do's and Don'ts. And we've got some definitions. What is a robocall? What should I do if I get a robocall? Why does the call look like it's coming from my area? And just as importantly, how can I report illegal robocalls? So let's watch a video. I'm going to start out with Robocalls 101 to give you a feeling for some background on robocalls and some pertinent information regarding handling these oftentimes illegal callers.
Robocalls come in many different forms. Some are legal and can be helpful. A pre-recorded message could remind you of an upcoming appointment or warn that your child's school is closed for the day. But many robocalls try to trick or deceive you to pay money or give away personal information. The calls may sound legitimate. The caller may say they're from the IRS, for example, when in reality the call may be coming from overseas. The ploys differ, but the motive's always the same: to get your money or information. Robocalls have become so prevalent because they give scammers a cheap and easy way to make make money. Technology allows millions of calls to be placed in a matter of minutes, and with the invention of calling via the internet, a method known as VoIP, the calls can be placed for pennies. The cost is low and the profit's extremely high. Illegal robocallers will go to extremes to get you to answer, even changing the number that appears on your caller ID. One thing they won't do is check the National Do Not Call Registry. When a caller isn't playing by the rules to begin with, they're also not checking the Do Not Call list. If you get a call from an unfamiliar number, there's one simple tip to follow: just don't answer.
Let's go to robocall myths, because a lot of people may see things or read things or be scammed into believing that some truths are accurate based on what they've heard on the street or what they've heard from robocallers.
Robocall myths. Many robocalls say press 1 to speak with someone, press 2 to remove your number. Don't do it. Pressing numbers won't connect you with anyone who can help and won't remove your number from any list. The only thing it does is confirm to the caller they've reached an active phone line and a live user. Then they can sell your phone number to other callers. If you try to string the person along, that won't hurt the caller. Their phones are programmed, and being on the line with you doesn't tie up their phone line or cause them any harm. It might be tempting to give the person on the other end of the line a piece of your mind, but simply put, they don't care, and they're not going to take you off their list. Their goal is to make money off of you, not to keep you happy. If you accidentally answer a robocall, don't press any numbers, simply hang up. Better yet, just don't answer.
You know, the robocaller is going to try to deceive you. The robocaller is going to try to do everything in their power to get you to answer the phone and to stay on the phone. And a lot of times it has nothing to do with any exceptions to the do not call law or to the robocall laws. Sometimes they lie and say they're the IRS. Sometimes they'll lie and say that they're Social Security, or they'll lie and say that they're the police department. So oftentimes these are imposter scams that start with a robocall. And when you pick up the phone, you have just told that robocaller that you are willing to at least answer their call, if not follow their directions. So that's why it's important to not push numbers to talk to a live operator, not push numbers to supposedly opt out. The real way to opt out of these calls is by going on the do not call list, putting your phone numbers on there, and by telling everyone individually when they call you, if you don't want their call again, say, put me on your internal do not call list, and please do not call again. Then hang up the phone. So if you tell them you tell them to add you to our internal list, that should be giving them no reason to call you back. No legal reason to put you on their call list ever again. And even those that you do business with, even politicians and nonprofit organizations and charities, even they should be having an internal do not call list of people that have told them through the phone or by mail to include them on their internal do not call list. Let me get you into one more video today. And that's one that's about the robocall initiative. In March 2020, Attorney General Dave Yost put forth an effort to make Ohio the toughest state for robocallers to operate in. Let's learn a little bit about the initiative and why it's important that states like Ohio continue to take charge of enforcing the law and combating robocalls.
At the Ohio Attorney General's office, we're often asked, why can't you stop these annoying robocalls? The bad guys have been very good at hiding, but we're trying new ways to find them and stop them. With the creation of the Robocall Enforcement Unit, we're exploring how to make it harder for robocallers to operate in Ohio. And aggressive enforcement action will go after many different players in the robocall industry who profit off these illegal calls. But we need your help. If you receive an unwanted call, file a complaint at ohioprotects.org. It takes less than a minute and helps us fight these calls. Even if you haven't lost any money to the caller, reporting the call could keep someone else from becoming a victim. As we work together to stop illegal robocalls, remember, the best way to fight them is simple: just don't answer.
So there are a lot of good measures we can take, and one of those measures is to report robocalls that you do happen to answer. And you can do that through our toll-free number or through the website I'm on right now, ohioprotects.org. Our toll-free number is 1-800-282-0515. And so it's real easy to go to the phone or go to the website, ohioprotects.org, and report calls that you don't want to receive again and that you want to let Ohio know and let the Attorney General's office know that they've illegally called you through that kind of robocall process.
If I file a complaint, what is my responsibility as far as pursuing this complaint? Will I have to go to court with you? Will I have to give a statement?
Most likely, we will take the information, put it in a database, share that database with folks like telephone companies, like US Telecom, which is the public policy arm of the Telecom Association, the industry. And they can use traceback mechanisms to try to find the originator of that phone call, regardless of whether caller ID spoofing has been used. There may be ways to trace back the call to the originator. So it's really important you have as much information as possible to input to our form. Now, I will tell you, it takes less than a minute to fill out our form. And once you get used to it, it can be really quick. So let's go to the form and see what information you may need if you want to report a robocall. So if you're back up at the top of the front page of our ohioprotects.org website, you can simply click on File a Complaint. And then under Take Action, you want to fill out the unwanted call notification form. So do you want to report an unwanted call? You absolutely do. So let's click here. And then we want the phone number, the type of phone that you were using, your phone number, the type of phone that you're using, a cell phone or a landline, who your telephone company provider is, the company that serves you with the service, your email address, your first and last name, your mailing address, things like that. And then as much information as you can give us about the caller. If you know the name of the company, if you know what type of call it was, a robocall or an in-person live phone call or a text message. If you want to describe the nature of the call, you can do that. Whether you lost money or not. Then you click this little checkbox after you read and affirm that statement, and then click Submit. And once you get going, it takes probably a minute or less to fill out this kind of a form. And I will say, if you want to actually get a PDF copy of this form and print it out and mail it to us, we even take complaints on paper still. So in those cases, you want to go back to the unwanted call box here. You want to download the unwanted call notification form. And this is where you would actually fill out the information on your computer or using your pen and mail the completed form to the address in the top right-hand corner. So we take live phone calls at our toll-free number, 800-282-0515. You can fill out this type of form online, or you can even print out a copy of this form before or after you filled it out on your computer and literally mail it to us in the postal mail. Whatever way you want to send it to us is fine. I will say it's probably most efficient and most effortless and certainly cheaper to simply fill it out online. As much information as you have about you, the subject of the call, and the nature of the phone call, the better.
Some individuals really prefer not putting in their names. To file this form, do we have to put in our names?
If you ever want to be followed up with by our office, it's important to put that information down. But let's face it, we've done 50,000 or more reports since March of 2020. You may not hear from us, or we may be able to just on the back end of the system share your information, maybe even enforce the action without you having to lift a finger or speak or testify or anything like that. I would not expect a call back from us. Simply giving us that robocall information is fine. And if you want to fill it out anonymously, you can just put anonymous in the in those blocks that require you to fill out the form. Everything with little red asterisks is where something needs to be filled in to be able to get the form submitted electronically. So it's going to give you an error probably if you don't fill out anything in any of the text boxes that are marked with a red asterisk.
Is this all confidential?
This would be, for the most part, open to the public through a public records request. We don't go out and publish the data. That's not part of what we do. But if someone wants access to the complaint database or wants access to the details of calls people have complained about, we certainly would need to share that information pursuant to public records law. So there are exceptions. We're not going to be displaying anyone's social security number or account numbers or anything like that. But it's important to not put that information in the complaint if you're notifying us of the call, just to be sure. And then, if you do need to complain about a business and you need to give us that information, that's certainly fine. But just to report a robocall, we're not asking for much personal identifiable information. You don't need your social security number. You don't need your driver's license number. Don't need your mother's maiden name. Things like that. But we do ask for a name and an address. So if you are kind enough, please fill that out. And again, you may never hear from us on that particular complaint, but it's important that we do hear from consumers throughout Ohio, and we're able to see what kind of enforcement is needed in different parts of the state and throughout different parts of the United States.
Now, is there a list where other people have called that we could see?
Usually the way to go about it is there are sometimes databases that people have put together online. So if you search for a phone number and you go to, if you type in who called me and the phone number, sometimes you may get services out there that have tried to compile lists of robocalls. We don't currently have a huge database that's searchable through our public website. We do have a fact sheet though, and you can find our fact sheet and more information at www.ohioprotects.org. It's filled with information. There's a fact sheet. There are lots of good details on there about more tips to help keep you safe and away, hopefully, from robocallers.
We're talking with Ryan Lippe. Ryan Lippe is a consumer educator with the State of Ohio Attorney General's Office, Dave Yost. Ryan, I continue to learn a lot about all the different things that the State of Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost does.
We do a lot. We've got 33 sections, and so consumer protection section I think is very important. But
I do too.
It's a lot of juggling. I mean, he has lots and lots of hats that he wears, including law enforcement related offices. And it's a very difficult job, but I think it's been very rewarding for him to solve problems and to protect the unprotected.
Ryan, thank you.